she's a mountain, then you're an ocean.
Hi, everybody. This is Lori, and I am the founder and CEO of Inclusivi-TEA, which is a company devoted to kindness and justice and sustainable living. And I'm also the host of this podcast called Inclusivi Talks Sustainability. And on our podcast, we talk with creative people and also people who are experts in the sustainability field. And today we're really lucky to have two guests who agreed to come back a second time because their original podcast was somehow misplaced. So one of them is my mom, Linda Myren, and the other is our good friend, Darlene Maahs. Thank you both for being here again.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
We don't usually lose our podcasts after we create them, so I very much apologize that happened. The reason I originally had Linda and Darlene on was that they were participating in an auction, an art auction that we had, raising money for Minneapolis in the wake of George Floyd's murder. And Darlene created a quilt piece for us, and my mom created a needlepoint for us, which then made me want to talk with them more about creativity and their history with that. So I want to start out by saying, why don't you start, Mom, and just tell me sort of when you first knew you wanted to do creative things and how you got into needlework.
I got into needlework by default.
Okay.
I don't know how else to put it. I had one grandmother who made women's wedding dresses and men's suits and could do heart hanger and all kinds of tiny, tiny little stitches. Another grandmother who did just basic sewing. She'd make aprons and sometimes a blouse or something. But basically, she made handmade rugs. She used a weaver and she used a handmade loom and would make loom rugs out of rags. And so both of them were artistic in their own way. And my mother was somebody who did a lot of sewing when her mother wasn't around. I mean, why would you want to sew in front of somebody who was a professional? I certainly didn't. But she did crocheting and she also knitted. And then I came along and they tried to teach me how to crochet. I can make a baby blanket if I work on it real hard. Other than that, I hate crocheting. I can't keep the tension right. I tried knitting. Even my mother-in-law, after I got married, tried to teach me how to knit, but I tend to put the pattern on the top, and then when I go back, I put the pattern on the bottom, and then I put the pattern on the top, and then I put the pattern on the bottom, and I can't figure out how to reverse it so that the pattern stays where it's supposed to stay. So after trying that for about 6 months, I decided that wasn't my cup of tea either. And then I found just plain embroidery, where I could use all kinds of weird stitches. I could make up stitches if I wanted to. I could go off pattern and do something around the corner over here and that kind of thing. So that's how I started with embroidery. And then my mother-in-law had a stroke, and she had done about a third of a pillow top that she was doing in needlepoint. And she'd gotten all the big stuff done, all the big background stuff that was done, but she couldn't figure out how to do the rest of it. So I told her I'd finish it for her. And I fell in love with it. It's fun. It's easy and it's fun. And you can do stuff. I mean, it doesn't take any thinking. You just go straight across and straight back, and you can't goof it up. I usually use a pattern. I have a couple of times done a needlepoint piece that I just made it up as I was going. But it was something I could do and something I was pretty good at. So between that and cooking, those are my two artistic talents. That's it.
Good at both of them.
That's what I do. I sew on buttons. If it has to do with the sewing machine, I gave my sewing machine away because it makes me so nervous just to thread the thing. I'm sure I've got it all put together wrong and that it's going to be wrong, and it makes me nervous. So I don't do that. I do hand sewing but that's how I got started.
And how old were you when you first started with embroidery?
Oh, probably 14, 15, something like that. I used to make pillowcases and oddball things that struck my fancy.
Okay.
So,
and any other art that you've ever been involved with?
Art?
Yeah.
I can draw a cartoon dog.
Okay. That's definitely something.
We used to do art was a family tradition when you guys were little because of the fact that it was okay. You can take your pencil and draw some kind of a line, and then the person next to you has to make something out of that.
Right.
They can dragon or a horse or whatever they want to, but they have to draw something out of it. And then we would take turns doing it, and did a lot of that kind of thing, but nothing serious, nothing I would ever want to have anybody see, although it might be fun. But no, no, I just like the needlework.
Mhm.
It's easy and it's simple, and it's something I can do even while I'm watching television.
Right.
And your dad doesn't complain about the fact that I get thread on the floor and sort of things. So it makes it simpler when you can
Sure.
pick it up and put it down.
Darlene, how about you? How'd you get started being a creative person?
Oh, I started sewing way back when we joined 4-H, so that had been probably what, when I was 10 years old,
Hmm.
11 years old. And I took sewing classes then, took this for projects, and then when I got in high school, I took home ec, and I've just continued with it. It's just, and then just kept thinking of different things to do. I've done everything from my clothes to kids' clothes to grandkids' clothes. I made hunting clothes and sold them. And then probably 10 years ago,
Hmm.
12 years ago, is kind of when I started on doing quilts. My mother-in-law embroidered them. She was like Linda. She did the embroidering. So then after you did the quilt blocks, they had to be put together. But I'll go back a little bit. I started on that because your mom had one that somebody put together for her, and we was out there and it wasn't matched. And I said, well, if you aren't in any hurry for it, I'll work on it. So that kind of started me. I thought, oh, this is kind of fun. So then when my mother-in-law then started putting together, then I put them together.
Hmm.
And it just became a project that way. And then I thought, I can do that. I could make quilts. So then I started out really simple, doing quilt blocks, just the squares,
Yeah.
putting them together. And then probably 4 years ago, when we moved down here at Bagley, then I joined a quilt club and kind of got me started on doing a little tougher stuff,
Oh.
using my brain a little more, advancing. And it's been fun. It's been nerve-wracking. It's been challenging, but as you say, it keeps your mind going so you don't
Mhm.
lose your mind. So you might lose it over that stuff, but you don't lose it over other things. So
That's right. It concentrates your mind losing.
right, yeah. Mhm.
So, Darlene, when you were younger, any other artistic activities that you did?
Um, well, I can't say when I was younger. It was just more or less because we was on the farm, and but after I got married, I did ceramics,
Okay.
and a bunch of us would even get together and we would do, say, wreaths and do different little projects like
Mhm.
that. But I did ceramics for a few years. We went to ceramic classes, and I did cake decorating classes. I did that, and so then I had a seed. She made everybody's birthday cake and that. Well, then that got old, so then I quit that. So, but no, I've dabbled in a few different things.
So,
And I like Linda. I tried the crocheting and I tried the knitting, and that wasn't for me.
okay.
So
So, Darlene, what do you think that having this creative outlet does for you? So, it sounds like you've had lots of different ones throughout the years. And why? Why do you need that? What does it give you?
the satisfaction of a challenge of doing something different, and it shows you can do things if you just try it. You know,
Yeah. Mom, how about you? What would you say it sort of
I
what
have
does
to,
it give you?
first of all, I have to make the comment that she saved my bacon with that quilt. I had decided I would make a quilt, and I got the blocks to do it. Each block took 20 hours to finish. And by the time I got the 25 of them done for making the quilt, a friend of mine said, "Oh, I'll sew them together with you." The problem was that every corner had to come together exactly right because it ended up being a circle on each corner, and a circle halfway around the thing was another circle that had to match, going all four different directions.
Yeah.
And by the time this woman got through with it, some places it was off by that much, which looked awful. You laid it on the bed and it looked like crap. So she saved my bacon after all the work of putting the thing together. It was marvelous to have her do that for me. So, what does it do for me? I don't sit still very well. Okay. Um, I either am, I either like to cook, I like to bake, I like to do those kinds of things. So it was easier when all you kids were home because I could always make another batch of cookies because they'd be gone tomorrow anyhow. So you might as well make them. So I could experiment and play around with food. I could try different recipes and that kind of stuff. It's just the two of us, and it's difficult to always come up with different recipes, especially when you're restricted as to what you're supposed to be eating and paying a little more attention to that. So sewing has always been something that was just a project, and it always had a beginning and an end. You started with this thing that was just a piece of cloth, and you ended up with something that, oh, well, that'll be a baby quilt for one of the great grandkids or something, and I never have been sure whether they appreciated it as much as I did, but I always looked at it after it was done and went, oh, that's really cute. I hope they like it. If you ever saw any of Darlene's quilts, what you would recognize is that she'd done things with old T-shirts. She did things with kids' shirts from when they were kids. She did all that kind of stuff years ago because she made them for the boys when they were leaving home or when they were going on camping trips and things. So she's been at it for a long time too. So for me, it's just something to keep my hands moving. I tend to have a little arthritis in my hands, and it keeps my hands moving. And it gives me a project. And like I said, I'm a person who needs to have something that's going to have a beginning and an end, which is probably why I'm still working because I have to have something that this has to be done by Tuesday. I like to have that kind of schedule in my life.
So, Mom, are you working on any quilt or not quilting, but any needlepoint or embroidery right now?
We just found out a month ago that we're going to be great grandparents again. So I finished a quilt. I have one made, but I usually try to have one in reserve because eventually my eyesight's not going to be good enough, and neither is my sewing to do that kind of stuff. And I just assume, since I've started on the great grandkids, I just assume each of them be able to have at least one quilt that I made.
Mm-hmm.
That someday they can say, "Is my grandmother made that for one of my kids?" So we've got other grandchildren who someday may be grandparents. So I'm just going to putz my way through.
Yep.
Nobody's asked for any bedspreads or quilts, or nobody's asked for any
Pillowcases or
pillowcases or anything like that. So I figured I'll just work on baby quilts for right now and see what I can make.
seems like a good thing. Darlene, how about you? Anything you're working on?
Well, I'm always working on something. I just got through doing 12 pillows for somebody that wanted pillows made out of their dad's, he'd passed away, out of their dad's clothes.
Oh.
So I volunteered.
So
I just finished them up. I've been working on them since December. So I finished those up. I finished up 2 wall hangers.
mhm.
I'm doing for last year's Christmas because we haven't had our Christmas yet. So I can need plenty of time to get them finished. So I just finished them. Actually, I just finished it this morning.
Nice.
So David right now is working on the rod to put on the hanger. But those are my last 2 projects I've done.
Very cool. So if you had advice, Darlene, to give someone who's coming up and kind of exploring being artistic, what would you say to them?
Try it. You don't know till you try it. If it don't work, you don't know. You just gotta put yourself into it and give it a try. And there's always YouTube. If you get stuck on something, go to YouTube. You can always get help on there.
Nice. How about you, Mom? What would be your advice to somebody who's feeling like they should do something crafty or artistic?
First of all, don't let anybody ever tell you what you should be doing. I mean, if somebody says, well, everybody in the family does this, or everybody in the family, or we just know you'll love to do that. If you do it once and you get done and you go, well, thank God that's over, don't do it again. I mean, that's kind of dumb to hit yourself over the head just because other people expect you to do it. You may decide that, I mean, my one grandmother did heart hanger. I don't know if you know what heart hanger is. It's you embroider, it's almost like a buttonhole stitch around patterns. And then you take a tiny, tiny little knife and you cut the centers out of them.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't cut the yarn. You can't cut this thread. And each stitch must be less than this long and less than,
And how long is this long?
probably a quarter of an inch.
Okay.
No stitch can be more than a quarter of an inch in heart hanger because it'll come apart. She used to do tablecloths that had a whole edging all the way around with heart hanger. She did shirt collars and
Wow.
like that in heart hanger. I would never do heart hanger. I think it's absolutely beautiful, but I know it would drive me out of my mind.
Yeah.
You know, so that's not something I do. And nobody ever said that everybody had to be perfect at everything. So you find the one that fits you. I mean, I like embroidery because if you make a mistake, you just take it out and do it over again. So,
Mhm.
it isn't life threatening. It isn't something that you cut it wrong like you can if you're making clothes or something, where if you misread the pattern, you may screw it up and not be able to finish it.
Right.
So for me, it was a no stress kind of thing. I think, well, you're married to an artist, if he makes something and it turns out crappy, he can throw it away.
Right.
I mean, he can go, well, that didn't work out, um, but you can't always do that with everything else. So it's kind of nice to have something going for you that you can go, oh, well, what the heck? That didn't work. So what? Or if you do something and the embroidery doesn't turn out the way you want it, you can always use it yourself. I mean, you always use the
Right.
pillowcase. Who's going to see your pillows? So I think you have to find something that fits you, though.
Yeah.
If with your hands drives you crazy, don't do it. Find something else to do.
Well, and there are so many ways to be creative. There's music, and I know you're also a pretty musical, Mom. And there's cooking, which you talked about, and there's art, and there's just so many ways to use your creative spirit. So I like that. I like Darlene. I like your advice very much. Try it, and if you don't like it, try something else because there's so many options out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like Darlene and I both cook,
Hmm.
right, Darlene? I mean,
Yeah.
it's something we do. We both cook. That's something we both do. But we don't cook the same. No
Right.
matter how many recipes we exchange with each other, we don't cook the same. We probably never will cook the same. Why should we?
Right.
I mean,
One reason we can't is because we all have different diets anymore. We just
that's
can't
right.
cook the same.
That's right.
Your husband's diet and then compare it to your dad's diet. You have to be really adventuresome if you're going to cook the two of them. Because there's very little they can both eat. So, but cooking was one of the things that, I mean, I tried something again the other day. I found a recipe for chocolate chip brownies, and I thought, I've never had brownies that you actually put hunks of chocolate chip in,
Mhm.
and you put them in clusters so that when they melt a section of the brownie into being more chocolatey than the rest. And
Interesting.
so I tried it. It was kind of fun, and it was like, okay, it's way too rich for us, but if you ever had to make a really fancy dessert, that's a recipe I'll keep, because
Sure.
if I have to make a dessert for something where people are going to eat little tiny pieces and go, oh, that was good, but don't particularly want to count the calories. But it's like anything else. It's sometimes it's simple stuff. I like salads that are made out of fruits and vegetables mixed together.
Mhm.
A lot of people don't,
Mhm.
but I like spinach with apples, and I like spinach with pears and bananas and that kind of stuff
Yep.
in it. And most people would go, why on earth would you do that? But then you throw a handful of nuts in it and some seeds, and you've got a pretty good, decent, as far as I'm concerned, a pretty decent tasting
Yep.
salad. But I might be the only one that likes it. But so what? It's still, you're doing what you want to do to make it taste the way you want it to taste.
Yep. I like that. And I think I agree with you. I think art's the same way, creation is the same way. So, Mom, if you, as you both know, we've sort of started really focusing on sustainability in our work, and we have a big challenge coming up that's 28 days of sustainability, and encouraging people to use just change their lives in tiny ways that will make their life more sustainable, which then allows us to continue to have a world where we can actually live. And the goal ultimately is a world where everyone thrives. So that's our goal. So I just wanted to ask you, what do you do in your personal life that you feel adds to a sustainable living and a sustainable future? What are the things, or something that you do?
I think my biggest problem is learning to recycle things without having so much stuff get piled up that you've got 900 cottage cheese containers
Right.
sitting in the house. Um, your dad uses the big pickle jars. He loves the big giant kosher dill pickles. So we end up with these jars. I use them for almost everything. I use
Yep.
them for fruit. I use them for all of my flour and sugar and cereal and all that kind of stuff. I have a shelf that is filled with giant pickle jars that are full of all kinds of stuff, rice and anything I can think of. Spaghetti fits in them nice. They seal
Yep.
and keep things fresh. I mean, you can keep brown sugar in them and it doesn't get hard. So I have a bunch of pickle jars. Some people might think that's nuts, but for me, it's something I've got. And I thought about it the other day, and I think I'm going to spend some time in my one closet where I've got all my yarn and everything that I do and put some yarn, use some pickle jars or some
Mhm.
smaller jars to put yarn in instead of having it in plastic bags that you have to keep digging through. Because
Yep.
in a glass, you could be able to see what color you've got.
Yeah, that's a wonderful one, because one of the things that we talk about, or we'll talk about probably in the challenge, is don't throw away those glass containers if you possibly can find a way to use them. And those are perfect storage containers. You can see into them, what you've got, and they're not going to spoil. They seal tightly, so that's wonderful. So that's a great recycling tip. That's a really good sustainability tip. How about you, Darlene?
About with Linda, it's the recycling and saving. I mean, I'm a saver.
Hmm.
The kids call me the bag lady. I mean, I reuse bags. I keep my bread bags and reuse them. And then, when I get too many, then I stick them all in a bag and then they go to recycling. But, and Linda talking about her pickle jars, we have one that we use when we do our pickled fish. Somebody said, "Where'd you get that at?" I said, "Bob and Linda." And
Oh yeah, and you can have another 10 or 20 if you want them. I have a
if
whole
we get out there, I could take a couple because Donnie needs some too. So,
yeah. It's just
but stuff like that, and jars,
Mhm.
certain jars, and that I refreeze. I put stuff in the freezer in them, and like with our pickled fish and certain things, I reuse bigger pickle jars and put
Yep.
that stuff in them and give it to people because you don't have to worry about getting a jar back and stuff stays in them.
And that is exactly, again, what we're focusing on right now, is that there are things you can do that when you say them out loud, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's so simple. And it's just remembering to do them. And I like that you reuse bags, Darlene, because that's one of the things that I've been thinking about too, is that we have all these bags. What can we use them for? And one of the tips that I thought about or read about was using bags for wrapping as well. If you
Yeah.
have these old bags, if they're cleaned out, you could use them for wrapping a gift. There's all sorts of things we can reuse things for. So those are great. Those are great. Thank you very much, both of you.
I think I'm not the only one that maybe is going, I want my reusable bags back when I go to the grocery store.
Yeah.
We find ourselves walking out from the grocery store and we've got 9 plastic bags,
Yeah.
which I will use in garbage bags and stuff like that. But nevertheless, I've still got 9 plastic bags that aren't recyclable, but I don't know what to do with them.
Right.
So I end up, you know, I end up going, okay, when I get them to the car, I put 3 bags in my big tote bags that I've got because that way I've only got 3 bags to carry in the house instead of 9. And it's like, this is so silly. And I got talked to them in the grocery store and they said, well, part of it was because nobody washes their recycling bags. and they would bring them in, and sometimes they would be so dirty that they didn't want to even handle them to put the
Mm.
groceries. And I'm going, why would you not wash them? They just throw them in the washing machine. They wash beautifully. I mean, so you throw them away after a year. So what? But I'd like to figure out something to do with plastic bags. I know my grandmother
Yeah.
used to make. I was trying to find my directions because she used to make rugs using plastic bags,
My grandma did too.
and I don't remember how. It had
Yeah.
something to do with knots, but I don't remember how
Oh,
she did
that's
it.
interesting.
And I don't remember if she cut them. So I may experiment around and see, because she used them and then she would use them underneath things. She would use
Hmm.
them underneath the sink where she stood. She
Right.
would have this rug thing, and I know it had plastic bags, and I think it had some material in it too, but I can't find. Someplace I've got the directions.
Hmm.
70
Well,
years
let
ago.
me know when you find the directions. So, Darlene, if you had to sort of define almost your life philosophy or the thing that drives you or the thing that supports you or whatever you want to call that, what would you say that is?
What keeps me going?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Much better than the way I put it.
know, just I don't know, just my family, just to keep so I can see everybody. So we just keep pushing and thriving and just take each day at a time and just hope for the next one.
Hmm. How about you, Mom?
Question. Put it as a question.
The question is, what's your life philosophy or what's the thing that keeps you going? I think those are both good ways to look at it.
A long time ago, I discovered that you had two choices very early on. Um, you can decide to get up every morning and think about everything that happened the day before that was awful. Everybody that said something terrible to you, everything that was made life miserable. Or you could get up every morning and look out the window and go, okay, it's a brand new day. I wonder what's going to happen today. And it's too tiring to cart around all the crap from yesterday. So um, I guess if I have a philosophy at all, it's just okay. But you got up this morning, and we went out and shoveled snow. It's waist high on our deck, so we went out and shoveled a path so we can get in and out the door.
Hmm.
And I'm standing there shoveling this snow that I'm taking off in layers, like 5 layers down before you get to the ground, because I can't lift shovels full of
Right.
80 pounds of snow anymore. Um, and I got to looking around, and it is absolutely gorgeous out.
Yeah.
No matter what else it is, it's absolutely gorgeous out. And I got to thinking about all the fun we had when we were kids, and all the fun we had when you guys were kids, playing in the snow and having a good time. I'm not about to go do that, but why not look at the snow like that instead of looking at it as something that gets in the way? So I try really hard to be an optimist. I think life goes faster if you're an optimist.
It goes better, certainly, if you're an optimist.
Oh, I think it goes faster. I think nothing will make a day drag on more than if you sit around and keep making lists of all the
Yeah.
things that went wrong.
Yeah.
So
All right. So the last thing I would like to ask each of you is to tell me a story from your life. And I know that you've had long lives at this point, so there's a lot of stories to choose from.
you're
But
not supposed
all I want is a story that feels like it's a story about you. So it could be from your childhood, it could be something about your parents, it could be from your marriage, from your kids, it could be anything, but just something that if you tell it to us, we will know you a little better. Mom, do you want to go first if you have one?
story about my life. Okay. I'm going to go clear back to high school.
Okay.
I went to a one-room country school, and I went to a one-room country school in 8th grade on the last year that they kept open the one-room country schools. That meant that for the 3 or 4 years before that, they had been taking all the best teachers and moving them into town. They'd been taking all of the best students. I mean, they had been allowing students to have their folks take them into town so that they could go to school in town. And then they were going to shut all the country schools. So I got to graduate from 8th grade. We had a regular graduation service with caps and gowns and the whole works. But when I was in 8th grade, there was nobody else in school down to 5th grade. And from 5th grade through kindergarten, there were 26 kids. The teacher had been through normal school, but not through high school, or not through regular teaching college. And she looked at me the first day of 8th grade and said, I don't know how to do some of these problems in math. And I don't know how to do some of these problems. So why don't you just take the county test and we'll see how you come out. So 2 weeks after school started in 8th grade, I took the county test and I passed them all. I mean, I got good grades on all of them. So I spent the rest of the first quarter helping teach kindergarten. There were 11 kids in kindergarten, so she really needed the help. So I got into high school and I thought I was pretty smart. I mean, what the heck? I've been teaching kindergarten kids for a year, Had no social skills, never been to a dance, never been to a boy-girl date or anything like that, and got into high school. And all of a sudden we were changing rooms and I didn't know where anything was. I'm not good at directions, you know that. I can get lost inside a 3-story building with ease and take me an hour to find my way out. And I went into English class, and the second day of English class, the teacher said, we're going to have a review. So I want everyone to diagram the sentences that are on the board, and remember, you must have all the dangling participles and everything included in your diagrams. I had no idea what a dangling participle was. I knew nouns and verbs and that kind of stuff that I'd learned younger in grade school, but I had no idea what some of this stuff was. I had never diagrammed a sentence, had no idea how. And so I worked on it as best I could, and I flunked it. Never had enough in my life. Never had enough in my life. And I discovered right then and there something very interesting. The teacher could have said, well, you're the dumbest person I ever met in my life, which would have been really easy considering the paper I turned in. But there were 3 of us who came from country schools, and we all did basically the same thing. Instead, she stopped the 3 of us before we ever went out the door and said, you've come from country schools. Why don't you come down during study hall, and I will show you how to do this, and you can take the test over again in a week. So the 3 of us went down 3 or 4 times. Didn't take long to figure out what on earth we were supposed to be doing. We all 3 took the same kind of a test over again. We all 3 aced it. That's the grade she put in our thing. She never mentioned it again. And I always thought if anything made a difference to me in high school and how my high school was going to go, it was just a teacher figuring out that we weren't stupid. We just didn't know how. And I wonder how many people there are in this world who people think are dumb because they've never been exposed to something or just don't know how to do something. And I think that made an enormous impact on me, apparently, since I remember it 70 years later. So
thank you. That I don't know that I knew that story. So thank you for telling us.
Yeah.
Darlene, how about you?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think different phases of my life have made improvements, and
So just choose one story. Remember that most of us haven't ever heard you speak before, so we don't know any of your stories. So just choose one story that kind of tells us about you.
well, I could probably say one of the more recent ones was when we sold our place in Potosi,
Small
and
town
I
Wisconsin.
had the beauty shop, my own shop, for 30 years. And I closed it up and we moved to Mont Horeb. And I worked in a nursing home in the beauty shop. And to me, and I'd never worked for anybody else like that and never did anything like that before. that was challenging and one of the most rewarding things I did, to be able to please those older people and work in something like that I wouldn't have had a chance to do any other time. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. And it was really a challenge. And it was something that gave me a different outlook on life and a lot of things.
So I think that's lovely because it's a story about also you taking a chance. That was unusual. It was new for you. You jumped in even though you knew it was going to be different and found out that it was great
It was, yes.
and probably very moving and was probably hard to leave.
Yeah. Because
I will tell you,
I really retired when I left there then. So after being there 11 years. So.
right. And I will tell you, Darlene, as a geriatric psychologist in my other life, I cannot even begin to tell you how much my clients care about getting their hair done and how much it changes their outlook on everything. And so I think your job was incredibly important.
Oh yeah, it was. It was just amazing. They might be. How can I put this without sounding bad? They might not know a lot of things in a lot of ways, but they know when they're getting their hair done, and they know when they get pretty.
Yeah, it well matters. And when you know, with my clients, when I look at the some of the women that I've worked with, certainly they went to the beauty parlor and got their hair done pretty regularly. It wasn't an unusual thing. And so to be able to continue doing that, and that just makes me want to sort of end this by saying that I think both of your lessons are really important because they both speak to the importance of kindness and the importance of paying attention. And for my mom, her story really talked about how someone else's kindness, which wasn't really a big thing for that person to do, but it was so important to the students. You know, that teacher it's not like that teacher, you know, climbed a mountain for you, but just noticing and paying attention and saying, yeah, I think that this isn't exactly what it looks like from the outset, was huge. And all it took was a second of her time to take a breath and think about it. And for Darlene, I think the kindness of you doing that and connecting with the residents and reminding ourselves that little things that we do make a huge difference in other people's lives. So that's how I want to end that. I think you are both magnificent. I could not have asked for a better mother. And Darlene, you were always such a lovely part of our lives. So I'm thankful for both of you.
Yeah, it was good to see Darlene. Hadn't seen her for a while.
And very, very nice. Very, very nice to have you both here. And for anybody who's listening, this is Inclusivi-Talks. It's our podcast about sustainability and kindness and justice and creativity. And next week, we'll be in the midst of our sustainability challenge. And I believe that I have another interview coming up with a young woman who works, I believe I have an interview coming up, but with a young woman who works with a really well-known personality in Hollywood. And she's his personal assistant. And so we'll be talking with her about how she uses creativity to help with her daily struggles of keeping a schedule and sort of promoting and supporting someone who needs the support. So thank you all very much. And again, thank you, Linda Myren, my mom, and Darlene Maahs for being here.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good day here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
If she's a mountain